You're going to need it.
Hey, welcome to episode number 270 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast. We are recording August the 10th, 2025. My name's Eric, host of the show, based in Southern Ontario, hunter, target shooter, ham radio operator, and of course, computer geek. As a first responder, witnessed an over-reliance on emergency services during major events, and they started a small preparedness company to help people get better prepared for at least 72 hours, if not longer.
And I'm Jeff. I'm based in Central Ontario. I'm a target shooter, ham radio operator, general overall handyman, and the weather nerd.
My name's Bear. I'm a tactical beard owner, base t-shirt merchant, government critique, and the reason we hit the explicit button.
Awesome. And I'm Chris Gilmour. I guess I'm the guest here tonight. I'm a modern day homesteader, an outdoor guy. So, hunter, trapper, like growing food. I've also worked in modern emergency and disaster management. And I mentor and teach people in the outdoors and consult, as well as in emergency disaster preparedness.
I'd say returning panelist, because you've been on before.
I have, yeah. I don't remember what we talked about. It was so long ago, but I was here a number of years ago.
It was a while ago, but welcome back.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Yes. So if you want to help support the show, buy some swag. We have the Canadian Prepper Podcast t-shirt and the tactical Velcro patch at prepperpodcast.ca. All the proceeds help cover the cost of the podcast.
And if you're enjoying the show, please take a few minutes and submit a review wherever you have found us. We want your feedback, even if it's good or bad. We also invite you to reach out to us and tell us something that you've learned this week. You can email us feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
All right, so we've got some cultivated content for you in this episode. We're going to start out with some recent news articles. We'll update you on our personal preps since the last episode, which was the Preppers Meet episode, actually, so a little while ago. Then we'll get into the main topic. We're talking with Chris today about outdoors stuff and growing mushrooms and all that kind of fun stuff. So we'll move into the news.
Yeah, so if you're anywhere around, I guess, basically Ontario to the east, it's been incredibly dry. We haven't had rain for quite a long time. There's some active forest fires in our area. Our panelist, Terry, he's got one literally in his backyard. I know out west on Vancouver Island, Ian's got one in his general area. And I don't have a problem with, not having bonfires and not having vehicles in the woods with hot exhaust and stuff like that. But Nova Scotia and actually New Brunswick just followed suit that they have banned you from going in the woods, period. So you can't go for a hike. You can't walk your dog. You can't ride your bike. You can't take your son to the local fishing hole and have some good father-son bonding time over a little bit of fishing. And the fine is $25,000 in Nova Scotia if you're caught breaking the rule. So understand this. If you drive impaired, your fine is $5,000. If you hike in the woods, it's $25,000.
Is that hiking with or without alcohol, though?
Well, you could add the alcohol onto it. That's probably another couple of $100. But if you're going to go big, you might as well do the whole thing. So,
it's caused quite the stir. That's for sure. It's
So is this in Canada or China?
Yeah.
Just to clarify which country.
So here's the funny part. In Nova Scotia, after the ban come out, there's a festival in Halifax. So after the ban come out, this festival put on their website that their fireworks were still a go. It had been approved. They had a safety plan in place, and they were still allowed to have fireworks. And it went crazy online. People are like, okay, I can't walk in the woods, but you can shoot flames in the air. Like, give me a break, whatever. So obviously the outcry was so bad that late on Friday night, they put a thing out and saying, okay, you know what? Yeah, we're gonna cancel our fireworks. Well,
makes sense if you're going to set the tone the way they did, right? It's crazy, but I don't know.
Yep.
It's one of those things. I'm still kind of looking at it going like, like Jeff said, I get the whole idea of banning fires at some point in time. You have to, but it's a little heavy-handed if I'm going to be honest. But I don't know.
But also the crazy part that we're not even going to deep dive, but we should mention is even if your property has woods, you can go, but don't have company over and go in those woods.
Yeah, it's
because then that fine also, right? So like they didn't just shut down regular paths; they're literally shutting down your backyard. But that's a whole other conversation
that's
tomorrow night. That's potentially what we're going to talk about tomorrow night. But
that's a good one for that's a good one for CPP Monday edition for sure. Yeah, we're not going to go too far down the political rabbit hole here of that, but it is interesting to see. It is. I guess I think it's a touch over heavy-handed, but it is what it is.
Again, like we said, like fires, common sense, and I mean, like, don't get me wrong, $25,000 fine. As far as I'm concerned, in this kind of weather, if you're stupid enough to go out there and light the fire, make it $50,000. But to give me the same fine as somebody who lights a fire for taking my dog for a walk, like, come on. Yeah. But anyways, I'll stop my rant right there.
I agree. I'll say what I have.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that. We're mad about it. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but it is what it is, right? Yeah. Rules are the rules. So, with that, let's move into what we've done lately for preps, and it's been a little bit since we've caught up with everybody. So we'll kick off with Jeff here.
Yeah, I could have pulled an Ian and gone on for half an hour over what I've done in the last month, but I'll keep it.
He does that just for the last week.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. Although I will say I did not make a CGN deal, so.
Okay.
But I continue to work on upping my game after what happened with the ice storm, and especially around my propane. And although I did fine, I found that major gap there, so I continue to add propane tanks when I find the right deal. On the ice storm thing, I'm just continuing to do more property cleanup. It's been pretty hot here. I'll get into that a bit in my weather blurb, but so I haven't done very much in the last few weeks because I would rather just sit in the air condition. But anyways, it is what it is. I've done
old man Jeff talking there.
Yeah, I've done some food prep. Obviously done some fuel rotation and stuff like that. So that's about it.
Nice. Yeah, for myself.
Oh, and I did have, and just so everybody knows, yes, I did have a birthday a couple weeks ago, so that's why Eric is calling me old. So
I would call you old regardless.
No, you have.
That's not the defining factor. Your birthday 2 weeks ago was not the defining factor.
It's not the defining factor. No, but still.
Right. Yeah.
For myself, then some fuel rotation because it was due to kind of rotate some stuff out, mainly because we got the boat out in the water, so burned through a bunch of the stuff that I had in storage and put new stuff in. And besides that, just spending a lot of time out at different campsites with the kids and just getting out in nature, which is apparently banned in other provinces, but not here yet. So
I was just gonna say, do it now before they ban it.
Getting it done before we're not allowed to do it. But yeah, it's been a lot of just getting out and camping and burning through some gas here and there and restoring those stocks. And that's been it for me.
There you go. As for myself, fuel rotation is always a thing. And to get a little bit of extra gas in those jerry cans, if you leave them with the hot weather we've had, if you leave them sealed, even empty outside, they swell up a little bit. You can fit like 25 liters in them. So that's a cheat code.
It's a little pepper hack.
Yeah, they don't stack nice. They wobble a little bit, but they swell up a little bit.
They hold more.
They hold more. So even though it's past the cap. So yeah, I did a bunch of fuel rotation. Started doing a little bit more cost-effective way of doing meat purchasing, because our usual Costco steaks that we buy for $40 to $50 for like nice like inch steaks, nice hearty things or whatever. We wanted steaks the other day, so I went into Costco and I'm like, oh wow, they're fucking $80 now.
Yep.
There's
I
the
was-
explicit button.
I was like, oh my god. So we have a business center, and Mel has decided to try and start the carnivore diet. And I was like, well, we're not buying $80 steaks. So went into the business center, you can buy chunks of meat and then just go home and cut them yourselves. So yes, it was $175 to buy this giant sirloin, but we trimmed all the fat, so we made our own homemade talon. So we've got it for the
Nice.
dogs, food, everything we need. So that was cool, and it was nice because the really crunchy fat bits are now dog treats, which the dogs love. So win-win, and we ended up making. I think I made 22 steaks out of $170 at like 8 ounces each. So I'm like, if you break that price down,
Nice.
I was like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, it was like an hour and a half of work, but I'm like, way better than anything you're gonna buy anywhere else or whatever. So yeah, it's just dabbling in that and even getting the daughter involved in it, right? Like get her up there and be like, careful your fingers, cut here and get chunks and everything. So yeah, getting everybody involved in that. Still waiting on the goddamn fucking police to call me to officially do anything about the tools that were stolen out of my truck 3 weeks ago.
Tell us how you really feel.
That's for a Monday night fucking episode. So I'm debating with my work if they're going to cover some of it. But after a few days after that was stolen, I realized that my first aid trauma kit that was also in my work vehicle was missing.
Oh.
So I was like, so that's a bunch of extra money, right?
Double whammy.
So it was pretty good. Confirmed last week and everything. My boss did say like, hey, replace that on the company dime. And I was just like,
decent.
Hey, just so you know, I was like, this is not like your traditional first aid kit. So confirmed an order today. He did argue with me about not having more than one tourniquet, even though I had two. But if I have to buy one tourniquet compared to replacing the $300 or $340 worth of first aid stuff coming, I will say that's a win. We're still on the debating side of who's going to cover tools, so next time I'm just going to smash all the fucking windows and make them pay as well if they don't want to cover my tools. But yeah, so dealing with that and got to do some work that I haven't done in a while. My brother had a brake issue on his vehicle. So he called me up and said like, hey, like I don't have money to pay you for labor and everything. And I was like, just swing by the house. It was like, if I don't have to go anywhere, I was like, it really doesn't cost me much. So yeah, me and him spent the day, a few hours outside yesterday, sweating like there's no tomorrow, but got all his brakes done up. He's got a bunch of trips coming up to Toronto and the US and everything. And he was worried his brakes were way overdue, like past the point of metal on metal. So we were able to get him up and running. So he's going to be safe on the road and hopefully not be in a news article that we're talking about maintenance on a vehicle in a future episode.
Very nice. All right. With that, Chris, you have anything you want to add to what you've done lately for preps, or you want to move right into the main topic?
No, I can start there. That's kind of a fun segment.
Sure.
I don't know if setting trip alarms for the bear that's been breaking into my chicken coop counts as a prep, but that's been something going on in my world the last few nights.
I think it does. Maybe give Pierre some tips. You can set him around his truck for the future.
yeah, totally.
You got the ones that take 12 gauge.
So I've been dealing with the bear the last couple of days, but that's a whole nother story. Lots of stuff going on in my world. I mean, being a homesteader, August, September are huge months for food. So we're also foragers, my wife and I, right? So I've been picking lots of wild blueberries. The choke cherries are coming on right now. So we're going out tomorrow. We're going to be picking choke cherries, freezing a bunch of those up. I've actually been thinking about trying to make choke cherry fruit leather. I know one thing we rely too much on is actually freezing food. Just because it's so easy and convenient, and we've been really just recognizing that as kind of a weakness in our prepping. That we're so reliant on electricity for storage. And I was actually learning. I got a Anishinaabe buddy who was telling me that that choke cherry was actually like a real staple food amongst the Anishinaabe people for a long time. And they would make it into like pemmikins and fruit leathers. So I've kind of got this. I want to mess around with that a little bit this year and think about drying and other ways of preserving stuff like that. So.
Nice.
So lots of food around. Cool. That's a big one right now. Also starting to scout. I mean, I would consider this part of prepping for sure. Starting to scout for the hunting season. I'm in the Eastern Woodlands, so going and checking on the acorns. I was literally scouting acorn trees today, and it looks like we're going to have a pretty good crop. We don't have a lot of farm fields up where I am, so I'm hunting interior woodland. So it's really all about the nut crops up here. and the acorns are looking good. So I'm going to start getting my trail cams out in the next couple of weeks and start, kind of prepping some of my spots. So getting ready for hunting season, hoping to put a couple deer in the freezer this year. So that's pretty big. What else? I just wired my generator into the house finally the other day, which felt like a huge win. Nice. I've been dealing with just extension cords through the front door. And we've got a couple of good power outages in the last little bit. And I also got the one panel, the generator panel, rewired so that I can irrigate my garden now off the generator, which I couldn't do before. So I've had a couple droughts where I'm out there hand watering the garden, and we got a pretty good sized garden. That becomes a whole day job in a drought. That wired in is a big one. And then maybe I'll throw one more other one I've been playing in.
Sure.
So I'm thinking a lot about me and my wife. Well, I'm on the road a whole bunch for work, and I always think about what if the communications went down when I was on the road, and I'm worrying how my wife's doing. And I've been kind of thinking about my backup for that. And I'm also an outdoors guy and do a lot of consulting in the bush. So I've always carried a Garmin InReach with me as a backup for emergency signaling and for like mapping and stuff for some of my consultant work. But we actually got a second InReach for my wife. And we've been messing around with the satellite communication, because I can see a lot of different scenarios where phone and internet might be down locally. But the InReach satellite system is still going to be up and running. So to be on the road and actually have that as kind of our like plan B or plan C communication, just to say like, hey, everything good, I'm on my way, or leaving home, meet here. But probably the more important thing is we've actually been practicing it. Like every time I go on the road, we actually message each other through the satellite just to make sure it's kind of second nature, and we're kind of getting used to like tracking each other on it and stuff. So that feels like that's actually easing my mind a little bit, just thinking about it.
Hold on. Practicing things while times are good. So do you know how to use them when things go sideways?
Buddy, do I have a podcast for you?
That's fantastic.
Yeah, no, that's good. How are those on fees for yearly usage and everything?
So they have a fee. They've got a really basic fee that they don't advertise well. And I want to say it's about $11 a month or something like that. So, it's $120 a year or something like that. So it costs you something. Now, the one I'm using anyways for work, so it's justified. The secondary one, that's an extra $120. Is it justified? I don't know. For me, it gives me peace of mind. I think it's worthwhile.
Justified there if it gives you peace of mind.
Peace of mind. Especially if you're in an area where cell can be sketchy and power outages, and landlines, and everything. I mean, it's worth it, right? Like it doesn't come for free, but maybe a leap.
I'm often like way back in the bush for work and often don't have a signal, and I always think, if there's like a day where like I get stuck or something comes up, like I've had my ATV break like way back in the backcountry and I'm mucking around and like I don't get out until hours after dark, and my wife's potentially like everything's fine, but she's at home starting to lose her shit, being like, what happened? Did he break his back? Whatever. So just to be able to send a message with the InReach to say all good 3 hours late, even that's worth it, just for peace of mind.
Or at least just
some kind of contact.
Good. Yeah, just even all good. Yeah. No, okay, yeah. All right. Yeah, I was curious because I'm like, I've always seen those, and I'm like, I know there's always a fee associated with it, and I was like, I'm curious about those fees, but I'm
the basic fee is about $10, $11 a month. So
okay,
it's not terrible. For the peace of mind, it's almost worth it. Especially in your scenario where you're like out in the middle of nowhere a lot.
Well, and then the other thing that comes with that is the ability to actually signal for help, like anywhere, right? And Garmin, I don't fully understand how it works, but Garmin has a team that will basically help with organizing the response. Because, like if I call EMS, I might call something in, but I have no idea what's going on. Garmin will actually stay in touch with me. They'll reach out to my family, like contacts and stuff like that.
Okay.
If I actually got hurt way back in the backcountry, and I've had some close calls back in the bush, to know that like, hey, I could message Garmin through the InReach with the push of a button. They know where I am. And now they've messaged my wife. They're letting me know updates on, whether EMS is coming in or whatever. So like there are some really cool perks like that,
And they do all the heavy lifting for you so you can concentrate on what's going on in front of you.
Yeah, totally. So for me and my lifestyle, it definitely makes sense. Now, probably the addition, because I've had that for a while, was getting a second one, which is not really being utilized except for emergency comms. But, again, it's my wife. So $120 a year for that peace of mind seems worth it to me.
Yeah, I'd say totally worth it.
And vice versa, if she needs to reach out to you if something happens at the homestead, right? Like peace of mind via both ways, right?
Absolutely.
Probably more for her, but
it does no good to not have it when you need it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll use that as a segue into the main topic this evening. And I know Chris reached out about a week or two ago, mentioned you wanted to come back on the podcast and chat with us some more and touch on like foraging and growing mushrooms and all that kind of stuff, and just share some of his knowledge and expertise that we've already kind of been exposed to a little bit here, talking about the Garmin and being back in the backwoods and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'll let you run with it there, Chris, and start telling us what you want to talk about, and we'll ask questions as we go.
Sure. Yeah. Maybe I'll give a little bit of background context first, just for kind of where I'm coming from and why I kind of want to talk about this. That's cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So my background, I was an outdoors guy, kind of my whole life. Worked as a wilderness guide for a decade or so, in my early 20s. And then also got really into kind of gardening and permaculture. Went and lived on a permaculture farm when I was in my early 20s out on the West Coast. And that's where I first got exposed to growing and foraging mushrooms, working on this farm out there. So I've been into growing food for a really long time. It was always the dream to move off into the woods and kind of, the live off the land kind of thing like everyone had. And then went down a few other rabbit holes with wilderness survival, training with guys down in the States and taking courses all over the place. And then 15 years ago, my wife and I bought our homestead. So dream kind of came true. A lot more work than we maybe had in our head when we set out on the dream there. So we've been kind of establishing forest gardens, using permaculture inspired systems since then. And with the goal of, between hunting, fishing, trapping, and gardening and foraging, trying to produce a substantial amount of food. And we don't by any means live fully off the land, and we go to the grocery store like everybody else, but we have hit a point where almost every single meal we eat is something from the land year round, even in the middle of winter, and that feels like kind of a cool milestone. I want to share one other actually little piece of background piece, and then I'm going to weave it kind of all together into this mushrooms piece here. One other little rabbit hole I went down, I mentioned kind of the survival, the permaculture, all that stuff, training, is coming out of doing wilderness survival for like over a decade, training with all these guys down in the States, started teaching it myself. I started kind of thinking about, what's the modern version of that as I started, kind of getting a little more concerned with what was going on with the state of the world. So I actually went back to school and I started studying emergency and disaster management in school. Ended up working with a consulting firm. So I've done some work, with governments, hospitals, different organizations in kind of consulting around emergency plans, running like mock emergency exercises, that kind of stuff. And the reason I share that story is it kind of brings me full circle to what I'm doing right now with my kind of work with Chris Outdoors and what I want to talk about tonight. I learned a ton working in modern emergency and disaster management. Like there's some really cool frameworks out there and, systems for scaling and organizing information, emergency comms. But I felt like there were some massive gaps. And one of the gaps was just in this more, understanding ecology. Because at the end of the day, when we're talking about extreme weather, when we're talking about so many of the problems we're facing, so much of it relates to ecology. Jeff said he's a weather guy, and so few people know how to actually read the weather or pay attention to the weather anymore,
We have Jeff. We don't have to.
No, exactly.
Anyways, long story short, I was working in emergency management, working for all these cities and stuff, and realizing the urban planners, like they don't have a clue what species of trees are growing on the power lines, and that some species of trees are actually way more likely to drop branches in an ice storm than others. Yet they're the ones that are actually doing design for the city. And I started thinking, man, this is kind of absurd how disconnected from the land we've had, and how so many problems we're now facing actually come as a result of our disconnection from the land. Like all of our ancestors would have, regardless of where we went in the world, So that bridging kind of that modern emergency management with things like permaculture and homesteading and like more traditional survival, like that's kind of my passion now. And I call it holistic preparedness, and it's kind of weaving all of those different worlds together. So that's kind of the perspective that I come at it from. And I wanted to talk about mushrooms tonight because when we think about ecology, one, it's a foundational cornerstone species for the entire planet, Mushrooms are essential for creating soil, for breaking down dead matter, but they're also amazing for food and medicine. And I have to say, of everything that we grow on the homestead, and we've been doing this for 15 years, mushrooms have been the biggest game changer for us for the amount of nutrient-dense food that we can grow in as small of a space with as little work that we put into it. So if I think about calories put in versus calories back, nothing beats my mushroom crops. And there's only a handful of crops where we truly grow enough to eat the entire year, 365 days a year. Mushrooms is one of them. But what's amazing is we spend way less time to grow those mushrooms than we do all the other crops that we have a 365-degree stash of. throw foraging into the mix and the ability to now not even have to inoculate them and cultivate them yourself and just be able to gather in abundance. And that's another thing, my wife and I are also professional foragers. So one of our businesses, so Chris Outdoors is the one, and then Wild Muskoka Botanicals is the other. Wild Muskoka is a professional foraging business. So we sell wild forage foods and drinks, drinking one of our forage bitters in this nice little whiskey and ginger ale right here. Sorry, a little shameless plug there. But what I was going to say about that is in the world of foraging, there's thousands of plants that you can eat. There's very few that you can actually gather in quantity. If you're actually thinking about self-reliance, if you're actually thinking about food security, if you're in a survival scenario, foraging is a great skill set, but there's very few things that are going to fill you up, and mushrooms are one of those crops that you can gather in abundance from spring right through to fall if you know your mushrooms, right? So that's kind of why I'm super stoked about mushrooms for the homestead. I really think they have massive potential for increasing the amount of food that we can grow in a relatively short period of time. Beyond that, we can start using them for nutrient cycling on the farm. And if you're getting into homesteading, whether you're doing this in an urban backyard or whether you actually want to have a rural homestead, mushrooms have also been a game changer for us in our ability to build soil. Because the mycelium we use to now break down organic matter to actually build soil faster. And that mycelium is like supercharged food, Like, for example, in the wintertime, I'll grow mushrooms in straw bags and I'll grow them in coffee grinds. I love my coffee. So, I take my oyster mushrooms, I take my spent coffee, I put it in a mason jar, I throw in some oyster mushroom mycelium, and then I grow a flush of mushrooms out of that right on my kitchen table that I throw in my omelet in the morning. But then we have a vermicomposter that's underneath our sink. So a vermicomposter is a worm composter, right? So all the kitchen scraps go in there. But we also feed that coffee back into the vermicomposter now, the mycelium grown coffee, right? So now the worms are literally eating that mycelium, which is it's like a multivitamin for worms, right? It's like a superfood for worms. So they're making super rich nutrients in their manure now. We then take that in the late March when we start our plant starts, and we use those worm castings to now start the plants that are going to go in our garden later on in the season, right? Now, this time of year, when I'm growing in big bags of straw, I'm taking my spent straw bags after I've already got 2 or 3 flushes of mushrooms from them, and then I'm actually laying those down in my garden paths. And now that's creating better soil. It's bringing in beneficial microbes. It's bringing in beneficial insects into the garden. And I get flushes of mushrooms literally in my garden bed. So I'm increasing yield in the same space. So maybe I'll take a little pause there. I mean, I'd love to chat about some of my tips on kind of getting started, but I don't know if you have any just general thoughts or questions just on, the value of bringing mushrooms into the homestead. And I will just stress that, sure, I'm in a rural scenario. I think this is completely applicable in an urban environment as well, right. Even an indoor environment with a few extra steps.
So I had a misconception. I thought we were talking about the funny mushrooms tonight. So this is out of my wheelhouse. I'm just joking. I'm just joking. You use a lot of words that I don't understand. But I can see my wife is in the chat and she's asked a few questions. There's actually quite a few questions that I've seen in here.
Oh, you want to back me up on any of those words too, because I'm sure other people are listening and saying, "What the hell did he just say?" So I'm happy.
Yeah. Like she's up. She wasn't up earlier, so I came on, and now she's sitting in the kitchen. So I might tap out because she will have so much more questions to ask because she understands what you're talking about. Like I understood what you were doing. Like you're growing mushrooms, then you're using everything, and I'm like, okay, I do other stuff. That's what my wife does. But so yeah, you just grow everything like on your kitchen counter? Because I thought mushrooms had to grow like in a really dark, damp area.
No, so that's one misconception. Mushrooms do not grow in the dark. There's a handful of species that do. The majority of them don't. And I grow in a few different ways. So I grow a lot. Most of the ones I actually grow outdoors. So I grow on logs. So I grow shiitake mushrooms, oyster mushrooms, lion's mane mushrooms, all on logs outdoors. I also grow in our garden beds. So we have pretty extensive garden beds here. And we mulch all our paths. And we also use mulch to reduce the amount of watering and all the other things that mulch are good for. But we inoculate. So inoculate basically just means I take mycelium from the mushroom. I put it into a medium.
Okay,
so the medium
hold on. What's that word mean?
Mycelium.
Mycelium. Yeah. Perfect. Oh, this is a great question. I always kind of forget to start with some of the basics. That's super important.
Oh, you're going to start with the basics with me. Don't worry about that.
No, all good. I'm sure a bunch of people are asking this question.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So a lot of people think about the mushroom as the organism, right? Because that's what we see. So you're walking through the woods and you see a cool mushroom growing out of the ground, or you see it growing out of the tree, or you're in the grocery store and you're like, okay, there's the mushroom aisle, right? The mushroom is not the organism. The mushroom is the reproductive organ of a way bigger organism. So mycelium is actually the organism. And maybe a good analogy would be, think about an apple tree, right? The apple isn't the organism. It's the apple tree, it's the roots, it's the leaves, it's all of those things. And then when the apple wants to reproduce, it grows an apple. And the apple is the seed. A mushroom is kind of like the seed for the mycelium. Most of the time, the mycelium, you don't actually see it. It's growing under the ground. It's growing in the leaves. It's growing in the trees, in the dead matter, right? It's literally breaking down and eating carbon, which is why it's so important in the ecosystem. And then once it's actually consumed its food source, which is the dead tree, the leaves, the whatever, it says, okay, now I'm ready to reproduce, and it grows a mushroom, which is what we then go and harvest for food or medicine, right? But the mycelium is actually a way, way larger organism. There's mycelial mats that are the size of football fields under the ground, and you would never even know they're there, but they're literally the size of a football field. One organism, right? And maybe once a year, it produces a bunch of mushrooms. The rest of the year, you don't even see it. So we're actually talking about like fungi or mycelium, the mushroom being the reproductive organ.
So I stand by not eating mushrooms because it just sounds like you're eating genitalia of the woods. That's what you're getting at. In a nutshell, in a really weird way of explaining it. That's
so do you eat apples? Because I just made the apple analogy. So if you were eating apples,
yeah, but the apple sounded a lot less weird.
Well, fair enough. But technically, if you're eating apples, you're eating reproductive organs, dude.
Okay.
I'm never looking at apples or mushrooms the same ever again.
All of a sudden, we're all starting the meat
Here, let me
carnivore diet tomorrow.
I'm going to jump into another misconception.
Go for it, Chris. Yep.
I remember.
So I got a quick question, if you don't mind, Chris.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Jump in. I'll come back.
So you mentioned about the mushrooms on like old logs and stuff like that. Do you actually plant them on there, or they just grow on their own?
No. So when I'm foraging, I'm going and finding logs where they're growing on their own. But what I actually do is I inject the mycelium so I go and drop the log myself, and then I inject the mycelium into it. And that sounds like a lot of work, right? When you think about it, because I got to drop a tree down, I got to buck it up with a chainsaw. But literally, it takes me a couple hours to cut 20 logs, let's say. My shiitake logs will fruit for up to 9 years without me doing anything else other than inoculating them. So compare that to something else in the garden, like tomatoes. My tomatoes, like I literally plant a seed in a little pot under a light, and then I need to like add fertilizer, and then they get bigger. Then I need to move them to a pot, and then I grow them a bit there, and then I need to plant them in the ground, and then I need to weed them, and then I need to prune them, and then eventually I get a tomato off there, and now I need to preserve it. Like, it's a lot of work to grow tomatoes. The mushrooms, I spend a half day, I do 20 logs, I've got 9 years of food, and all I do is basically harvest after that for the most part. I mean, there's a couple other steps in there, but like it's a substantial amount of food for a fairly little amount of work. What's interesting, the wine caps that I grow in my garden bed, we have wine caps popping up everywhere in the garden now, and we planted those once, and now they're just organically spreading, and they come up year after year, right? So it's a substantial amount of food that starts to come up with very, very little effort. And then we haven't even got into the medicinal benefits of mushrooms as well, right? Which are pretty amazing. If you want to talk about like off-grid prepping and literally being able to treat ailments with mushrooms.
We're going to go down that rabbit hole.
I know this is kind of maybe a rabbit hole to go down, but wild mushrooms, you have to be careful sometimes picking them. Can they be toxic or?
Oh, there's a ton to know with wild mushrooms. It's not a beginner's game. It is something you want to take on slowly. But what I will say is, it's just like plants. And I don't know if you guys ever got into like foraging or anything like that, or even, honestly, even hunting and trapping. Like when I go, so I'm a trapper. I snare rabbits in the wintertime. I catch beavers. I'm a hunter. I shoot deer. When I kill wild meat, I look at the liver, I look at the kidneys, I look at the organs. Like there is risk with wild meat, Some wild meat, when I'm eating deer, I have no problem eating a deer that's still red in the middle, that's rare. I would never do that with a black bear, right? you can get incredibly sick from eating rare black bear. Like black bear has to be cooked well done.
Yeah.
So there's a learning curve with anything with food, same with pork, like you can eat a rare steak. You're not going to eat rare chicken or rare pork probably, right? I mean, maybe some people do, but generally that's a bad idea. So there is a learning curve with anything. Mushrooms definitely has one. The cost of being wrong is steep because there are a handful of mushrooms that can kill you. There's a whole bunch more that can make you sick. But there are some really safe groups to get started with, and there's a process to learning about it. And this is what I teach people in my stuff that I do with Chris Outdoors, right? Like I've got a whole online course on growing and foraging mushrooms where I work people through, what are the steps to work towards being confident enough in your ID skills to be able to go out and forage. Certain groups are safer than others. There's some steps to the ID. And then, of course, growing, there's lots of steps. I make it sound like it's really easy. We grow more food than we can eat in a year in mushrooms right now. It took me a decade of learning to get there. My goal is to help people be able to figure that out in less than a year. What I did spend a decade learning how to do with everything I've learned.
Yep. We had a good question in the live chat here from Justin, and it kind of lines up nicely with the weather we've had the last little while. Do mushrooms handle heat well?
So it depends a little bit on the species. And I would say it's less about heat and more about humidity. So when it's really dry, mushrooms don't do well. And this drought has been terrible for mushrooms the last little bit. So in general, mushrooms like high humidity, and then different species have different heat tolerances that they like. So you'll have mushrooms that grow in the spring, mushrooms that grow in the summer, mushrooms that grow in the fall. So you're harvesting different mushrooms at different time of the year as the temperatures fluctuate across the year, right? So yeah, it's not quite that simple, but they definitely don't like dry weather. I mean, this drought has been awful for foraging mushrooms. Although I literally ate lion's mane and oyster mushrooms with a chicken stir fry for dinner tonight that I'm growing in straw bags on my front porch. So
cool.
And because I'm growing them, I can create a controlled environment. Mm-hmm. The other thing I should mention with the mushrooms too is you can actually, once you get them started, so I've got the mycelium that we just talked about, basically the organism, right? So I use the mycelium like a seed. So I'll take the mycelium of, let's say, oyster mushrooms, and then I've got some straw, or I've got whatever my medium. I've got a log, I've got wood chips, I've got coffee grounds, whatever I want to grow in. I put that mycelium into it, right? Then I'm able to grow a big bag of it and then get to flusher mushrooms. I can then take that mycelium, spread it to another thing, and actually reproduce it. So the other thing that's amazing about mushrooms, if you think about a longer term disaster scenario, grid down scenario, you actually have the ability to be self-sufficient with mushrooms where you can actually regenerate it over and over again without having to go and buy more seeds. And that's interesting too, because a lot of seeds only have a few years before they start to lose their vitality, right? I mean, some species last like forever, but other seeds, 2-3 years in, you're really not getting a good flush. So you have the ability to keep mushrooms going almost indefinitely if you know what you're doing.
Interesting.
People also, sorry, this was the other tangent I was going to go on before, though. A lot of people don't realize how nutrient dense mushrooms are as well. And, when I first started learning about mushrooms, like I think about the white button mushrooms that we're familiar with that, you buy in the store. And I don't know that those are super nutrient dense,
Probably not because they're at the store.
Yeah, well, and that has something to do with it too, right? But when you get into like things like shiitake mushrooms, oysters, like shiitake are actually an amazing source of vegetable protein. Now, I would way rather join you, Pierre, with that nice chunk of beef and have that steak for my protein. But I'll cook those shiitakes on the side. If you don't have the steak, though, like you literally are getting a substantial amount of protein from those shiitakes compared to what you would most other plant foods. So out of kind of non-meat things, they're one of the higher protein sources. They're actually full of micronutrients. A lot of people in Canada we now know, are especially in the North Country, are deficient in vitamin D. And of course, vitamin D is huge for our immune system, for fighting off infections, fighting off, all kinds of things. Mushrooms have a very high amount of vitamin D. If you're eating mushrooms regular, you don't need to take vitamin D supplements to boost your vitamin D levels, right? Get into the whole realm of medicinal compounds. They really are fantastic. What you're getting from them.
Okay, so a few questions that I'm seeing. So don't want to leave anything out. Do you companion plant with any of your mushrooms? Have you noticed any gains in your garden? Like you're still getting mushrooms, but gains in the rest of your garden with certain mushrooms and certain other veggies in your garden beds?
I think so. I haven't studied it scientifically enough to actually say 100%. So
it just looks like it. So you're like, yeah, that's it. Like,
well, it's kind of it's observational based, right?
yeah.
So we've been running the garden for 15 years. We just started doing the wine caps about maybe 6 years ago. These are the ones that we actually inoculate into the mulch. So one thing I'll say is, we're absolutely increasing yield in the space that we're already growing. Because you imagine your squash plants, right? Like squash plants grow huge.
Oh, geez, they take over everything.
They take over everything.
Yes,
And squash are one of the really important plants that we grow from a homesteading and survival perspective, because you can actually grow substantial amount of food that you can put away for the winter, right? And again, not everything, like my cucumbers, like they peak for 2 weeks and then they're all rotten a week later. Yep. Squash, the squash I'm growing, they're lasting right through into March and April, right? So squash is a super important homestead species, but they take over everything. They take up a lot of room. We can grow wine caps underneath the squash. So now in the same amount of space, instead of just having squash, I've got 2 different crops. I've got squash and I've got wine cap mushrooms. The other 2 things I can say for sure are the soil has gotten much better since we started growing wine caps under those beds, because the wine cap is actually helping break down that straw and basically creating a natural fertilizer for the garden beds. In turn, we are getting bigger squash plants and we are getting higher yields from that.
Just better nutrients, food.
Where I can't answer that question for sure, I can tell you we're getting higher yields because we're growing mushrooms there. I can't say whether it's just from soil building or if there's that companion plant symbiotic relationship that the person's asking about. I suspect that there actually is. I can't prove that. So there's the observational piece. But absolutely, we're getting higher yields because of it.
Is it because you're companion planting, or is it just because you're growing it there and there's just a benefit to it?
Yeah.
So it's not so much associated. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Are there any mushrooms that don't grow well in our climate? I don't know if that's a question or not. I haven't looked, but I'm just curious, right? Like, my wife is big into this. She's over there asking 1,000 questions, and now I got to decipher everything so I don't get in trouble later because I'm ignoring her because she doesn't want to come on.
You're in trouble either way, Pierre.
Yeah, she would be way more beneficial on a lot of this. She enjoys. She's doing her horticulture degree with the university, so she's doing a bunch of stuff like this. Like, she is loving this conversation. She hopefully will come on for the last 20 minutes and save me. But just right, we're thinking like, okay, you live in Canada just like us. Like, is there anything that like you depend on? Either if you really like this, you got to depend on a grocery store, or like, is it a free for all in Canada? You just have to pick your time to grow anything and everything available.
So every region has their mushrooms that do well there, right? So if you're in the American Southwest, if you're down in Florida, you're down in the jungle, you're West Coast, you're gonna have different mushrooms, right? There's some species like oyster mushrooms that grow across the entire world. But they have subspecies that do better in different climates. Some are suited more to warmer environments. Some are suited better to colder environments. So yeah, you do want to kind of know what are the mushrooms that grow well in your area for sure. And not all mushrooms will grow anywhere well. What's interesting though is, you can start getting into different strains. And this sounds kind of complex, but it's actually as simple as, you go on the website where you're ordering your strains and they have like warm strain varieties and cold strain varieties. So I'll give you an example here. Shiitake mushrooms are one of the ones that we grow the most of. I love them. If you don't know what a shiitake, you know what a portobello mushroom is? Have you heard of those? Yeah. They're like the real big fat ones that people sometimes like throw on a burger or something. Yeah. They're actually really nice done up on like a barbecue, like put a little bit of oil and garlic on them and fry them up on a barbecue, or not fry them, grill them up on the barbecue, throw them on top of a burger, real nice. But shiitakes are kind of like that. They're like big, they're meaty, they're actually filling, which again, from a prepping standpoint is why I like them. Like, they actually will make your belly full. Even though they're not meat, it might be like the closest thing that you're going to get that's going to like fill you up and feel like you're biting into something meaty. If you don't have access to meat in a survival scenario, in a prepping scenario. So shiitakes, I actually grow 3 different strains. I have a cold strain, meaning that it fruits better when it's cold. I have a hot strain, and then I've got an all-weather strain, which means I basically have some of my logs flush in the early spring, some of them flush in the summer, and then those ones that flushed in the early spring flush again in the fall, which basically gives me a steady crop of mushrooms right through the entire growing season. And with each one of those harvests, I'm drying and I'm freezing and I'm putting them away, which there are the mushrooms we eat through the whole winter. And we can't even eat the mushrooms. Like, I've still got mushrooms from 3 years ago that I haven't eaten yet because we grow so many. And it's so little work is the part that I literally like to stress with it.
Oh, that's cool. There's a question in here I was going to throw up, and now I can't find it. Oh man.
So one from my wife again. Can you start doing this for many mushrooms you buy at the store, or are the spores useless on those?
That's the one I was looking for.
Or depends on like the quality of what you get depending on the store.
Yeah, that gets into a much more kind of advanced kind of type of mushroom growing there. So theoretically, you might be able to, but now you're almost talking into like lab work. So if you're growing from spore, you're literally talking about like so you can buy mushrooms from the store and they may release spores still, like after you brought them, right? That happens. Like mushrooms, you bring them home in a paper bag and you'll open the paper bag and there's like a little white film on the inside of the paper bag. Those are the spores that were released from the mushroom, right? If you know what you're doing, you can take those spores, you can put them into a petri dish with a little bit of agar, and you can start to grow them out on a petri dish, and then you can move it into like a grain spawn, and like it's a whole thing. It's like lab style stuff, super complex. That's not what I would suggest as the beginner way to get into doing it, or the kind of prepping way to get into it. So there's all kinds of mushroom grow companies. Here in Ontario, there's a great place, Heartwood Mushrooms, that I buy off of. There's another place called Grow Mushrooms Canada that I buy from. So I basically buy like these massive bags of mycelium. And then I use that mycelium to go and inoculate my other projects. So I put those into the logs, I put them into the straw, I put them into the coffee grounds. And then in my course, my online mushroom growing course, I basically teach people how do you buy one of these bags. You buy the bag for $30, but then you turn it into $300 or $3,000 worth of mushrooms by spreading it out and growing it over and over again, right? So I think that's a more practical way.
And you can still reuse those spores, obviously, over time, right?
Yeah. There's a little bit of a learning curve. Like it does get a little bit more technical with that. But yes, you can start reusing them over and over again. And there are ways you can start to take wild mushrooms and cultivate them and create new mycelium to grow more with as well.
Yeah, like you go and you harvest them, and then I think you let them sit out for like a day or two or whatever so that the spores start to surface, and then you can smack them down on a table or a piece of paper or something like that. And I think release the spores. If I'm standing to be corrected, but I'm still learning mushrooms.
Yeah, there's a handful of species you might get away with that. The thing is that so a lot of mushrooms are really susceptible to molds and bacterias, right? So if you don't do everything super, super clean, even though in theory that works, there's a good chance that it won't. But when you start to learn what the really aggressive mushrooms are, and one of the reasons I teach oyster mushrooms as a starting point, oyster mushrooms are very common in the environment here, and they're one of the most aggressive growing myceliums. So I've actually taken oyster mushrooms, chopped them up into little pieces, rolled them up into a piece of cardboard that's wet, and stuck it in a plastic bag and let it sit for a week. And you open it up, and that cardboard is now full of the mycelium. Now you cut that into little squares, and each one of those is like a seed to now go inoculate your next project, or basically like plant like you would a seed. So yes, you kind of can do what you're talking about, but that does start to get a little more technical at that point.
Fair enough. You could use like a clean surface, like if you were to sanitize glass or like a stainless steel type of surface.
Yeah. You're often, when I'm doing my mushroom stuff, like I've got a little alcohol spray bottle. I'm spraying everything down with alcohol. Like you're being very meticulous around all those pieces.
That's the same thing with doing the horticulture practices that I do. Oh, by the way, hi, I'm Mel.
Hey, nice to meet you.
With the horticulture practices that I do, it's the same thing. You want to make sure your area is sanitized and your tools are sanitized too, because if you are cleaning up a plant that does carry a disease, you don't want to transfer that one onto the next one. So it's almost the same concept as that, which makes sense, right? Because like you are technically, like you said, developing these seeds, and those genetics are going to transfer within those spores.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and there's ways that you could go and buy a mushroom from the store and actually clone it. But again, this is kind of petri dish Kyle stuff. So I could buy a mushroom from the grocery store. I could put it, let's say, get a little plastic box, that's totally sterile. Put on some rubber gloves, alcohol spray, the whole thing. And then inside of that box, cut that mushroom in half with a scalpel that's been sanitized, cut a little piece out, put it into a petri dish with a little bit of agar, which is like kind of just a sugar compound.
Sugar, yeah.
And the mycelium will start to eat that and grow on it, right? And then once you get your petri dishes full of mycelium, you can now spread that to the straw, spread that to the different things. I mean, again, I'm kind of oversimplifying it, but absolutely you can go that way. I dabbled in that stuff. Sorry. Go for it.
Is that their main food? Do they go searching for sugars?
Yeah, they go searching for a carbon, and carbons are made up of sugars.
Fair enough.
Right?
Yeah, and are released from majority of the plants at nighttime too. So is that when they do majority of the growth? Is that where like maybe that quote unquote myth of growing in the dark happens? Because a lot of plants do release the carbon at night.
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. I've never really actually thought about that.
Well, yes, especially like at nighttime, especially trees. Like all plants will do it, but mostly trees. Like they release most of the carbon at nighttime.
Yeah, I don't know. I've actually never thought about that. That's kind of interesting.
And the mycelium too, like it connects the believe it or not, they will actually connect from one tree to another, but they'll connect the grass, the dandelions, all that stuff, and they transfer the information from one tree to another. So it's basically like underground internet cables, if you will. Like it's pretty flipping cool once you get into all that stuff.
Oh, it's so rad when you start. That's what I started this whole talk off talking about how mycelium and mushrooms are like a cornerstone species of the planet, right?
100%.
Like literally, our ecosystems rely on them. You take mycelium out, everything collapses.
It does.
There is no more humans. There is no more trees. Like they're that important because they're basically what breaks down nutrients, makes them bioavailable. They're what help build soil. I mean, along with bacteria. But they're like, just like you said, tons of trees and plants actually rely on their symbiotic relationship with the mycelium for survival. So trees will, you've got the tree roots, but then the tree roots are connected to mycelium that reach over to the next tree and reach over to the next plant. And it spreads nutrients, it exchanges information. We talk about the internet for keeping humans in touch. Mycelium is like the internet of the forest. And there's tons of, that might sound out there. You can find all kinds of scientific data to back that up.
Especially when you go based into arboriculture, which I've touched base on, and the arboriculture does state that it's like you got your one mother tree that's like your main internet hub, if you will, and underneath that mother will actually send out all its ancestor knowledge. So if it's a 200-year-old tree, can you imagine what it's feeding off to all the other trees? And they actually recognize their kins. So they'll send most of the resources to their children or kins before anything else, and they utilize the mycelium from the mushrooms to do so.
Neat. We've got a good question in the live chat here from Dave, just in regards to can you combine different mycelium in the same space?
Yeah, so they're not going to like mix and grow with each other. I make growing chambers. So when I'm growing indoors in the wintertime, and this is something that you could literally do in an urban apartment. Like you could have a constant flush of mushrooms going year round in an urban apartment. So I will have 2-3 different species kind of growing in the same area, but they're not eating the same food. They're kind of separated from each other. They're just in the same general area. So the myceliums are not mixing with each other. Now that does happen a little bit out in the wild, but the simple answer to your question, Dave, would be no, you don't really do. You're not growing the same mycelium in the same medium, meaning the same food source. You can grow them in the same space in close proximity to each other, though.
Cool. Let's see if we got any other questions in the live chat here. But I guess one question that everyone's going to ask is just for the beginner, what's the best way to kind of get into this or really start to get exposed to the whole growing of mushrooms and getting into the space?
Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in this, probably a good starting point is you can look up one of those companies I mentioned, Heartwood Canada. They're out of Manitoulin Island, or Grow Mushrooms Canada, and a lot of them sell mushroom growing kits. So it's literally like a block of mycelium, and it shows up in the mail, and you cut a hole in it, and you mist it, and the mushrooms grow out of it. And that's a great way just to kind of experience it and learn. You'll pay like $30 for one of these kits. You might grow $30 of mushrooms. So you're not going to actually save any money doing it. You're not thinking about self-reliance. You're not really thinking about prepping. But if you just want to experiment and learn, it's a pretty cool project.
You're gaining knowledge, right?
And like you said earlier, they don't necessarily have to be in a dark damp place, do they?
No. You don't want them in a dark place. No. You want them in indirect light. Okay. So, I grow them on the front porch of my house. Now, if you're growing them indoors, you do want to be careful with the spore release, right? Because it's not good for us to breathe in large quantities of spores.
And will feed in on the drywall and everything else.
Yeah. And you don't want spore. If you live in a damp house that's susceptible to mold, like you could get mycelium growing in your carpets and your floorboards and stuff, and actually do damage to your house. So there are some safety risks with growing indoors as well. Outdoors, you don't really have to worry about much. So when I grow indoors, I grow inside of a tub. It's called a monotub. They're super easy to kind of make. And it basically creates an environment where you have the perfect humidity. And I basically just have it in the corner of a room. So it's getting the indirect light that just comes through the window. It's not in full sun, but when the lights are on or during the day, it gets light. At night, it's in the dark. And that's perfect for growing conditions. Being in the tub creates the right humidity environment for it.
How do they react to like grow lights? Obviously the same way as like normal plants do then?
Yeah, you can use grow lights for them for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Pierre in the comments, he's asking, are those kits able to be made into constant food source like you're doing in your garden / logs?
Yeah, so that's what I teach people how to do. And this is, maybe a little bit of a different thing than what you see. So there's all kinds of these companies out there that sell these kits. In my online mushroom growing course that I run, I basically teach people how to take a $30 kit that's meant to, grow 2 or 3 flushes of mushrooms. How do you use that as the seed source to now grow thousands of mushrooms, right? And that's so I basically take one of those kits that's meant to be grown as a kit, but I don't use it as a kit. I take in little tablespoons of that mushroom, and then I use it to inoculate other things like coffee grounds, like straw. I put it into wood chips. I put it into logs. It really kind of depends. What do you have available? If you live, I'm in a rural environment. I cut my own firewood, so I have access to logs. So I grow a lot of mushrooms on logs. But if you're in the city, you might not have access to that. But do you drink a lot of coffee? You could grow it on oyster mushrooms. Do you have a source of straw nearby? Do you have a neighbor that's a hay farmer? There's all kinds of different fibers that you can grow mycelium on. So I teach people how to take those kits and turn them into a longer term mushroom growing project, which if you want, again, you want to get back to the prepping theme here. That's what I think actually gets us in a place where it's like, oh shit, the lights have gone out for a bit and I'm producing food, potentially long term. And with a very quick turnaround from when I inoculate it to when I get the food, and very easy to control and cycle, so you have a steady supply.
Oh, very cool. It's, this is piquing my interest for sure. I never thought that mushrooms would be a preparedness thing. But,
yeah, a lot of people don't think about it, man. But from a food security perspective, like it literally is my number one crop. If I want to think about and we grow everything here, like we grab all the big traditional gardens. But if I could only pick one crop from a preparedness, self-reliance, shit hit the fan scenario, it would be mushrooms. Yep. Because of the nutrients, because of the ease they are, because of how hardy they are, and how much you can grow in a small space.
That's awesome. Pierre's got a good, another good kind of segue question here. Where are all these courses available for people who might be interested in this?
Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in learning kind of the way that I teach or what I do, so my website is chrisoutdoors.ca. And if you go on there at the top under courses, you'll see the mushroom course. So mushroom growing and ID. I think you can also go to actually themushroomcourse.com and check it out. I did actually make a code for the community here tonight. And it's prep, P-R-E-P, prep 40. We'll give you 40% off the course. So it's almost $100 off the course with that. I think it's like $98.50 or something for the course. That's lifetime access. And we get into both growing indoors and outdoors in there. We get into multiple different species. We also have live guest expert specials where we actually dive into. So for example, I had a guy in not too long ago and he did a guest talk on making medicinal mushroom extracts from lion's mane mushroom. And interesting enough, this guy has been doing a whole bunch of research on people with concussions and post-concussive syndrome and seeing amazing results treating people with post-concussive syndrome with lion's mane extract. And getting some really, really great results. And, we all probably know somebody in our life that's had a concussion that's been life-altering. And there's some very, very promising research. Also things like dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Lion's mane mushroom specifically, there's some amazing clinical research coming out showing lion's mane's ability to restore the neuronapses in our brains and stimulate those electrical signals and actually help slow down the onset of things like dementia and Alzheimer's. So we inside of my mushroom growing course, we actually brought in an expert in medicinal mushrooms, and we did a whole evening on the medicinal benefits of lion mane. So I bring in, guest experts like that from time to time. And then of course we have the whole thing on wild mushroom identification. Because like Jeff brought up, there are some poisonous mushrooms out there. You really got to know what you're doing. You don't want to be using a phone app to ID edible mushrooms. I mean, sure, you use the phone app to have fun trying to get to know them, but I would never trust my life on a phone app for mushrooms. No. There's too many that can kill you and make you sick. So inside of the course, we teach you like the real foundational identification stuff that you need to get to know. So anyways, yeah, that's chrisoutdoors.ca. You can check that out. Go to the mushroom course there, and Prep 40 will give you 40% off if you're interested in that. Yeah,
Thanks for the discount code. Appreciate that.
of course. Yeah.
Let's see. And so that course, so you mentioned you've brought some experts in and stuff. So is it like an ever expanding course? Like you're adding things, taking things away, or is it like a static type of course, or what's the setup?
Yeah. So you people, when you sign up, you get lifetime access, and there's a ton of pre-recorded stuff. So basically, all the lessons for how to get set up with growing. I mean, figuring out where's the best place to grow inside of your house, what species should you do, where do you get your equipment. Videos on growing on logs, growing in your garden bed, growing inside on straw, growing on coffee grounds. I have pre-recorded lessons on all of those. And they're set up in really bite-sized modules that really get to the point, so you know what you're doing. I also walk through all the common mistakes that people make get going started. So that stuff is just there all the time. Something I added this year that's been a huge hit is these live expert sessions, where every couple of months or so, I'll bring in an expert in a field that's kind of beyond my knowledge base, So I've been doing some fun stuff. We brought in that guy I mentioned to do the lion's mane medicine making. I'm bringing in a guy in September to do one all on fall foraging. So we're going to be talking about what mushrooms you can forage in the fall and what are the safest ones to collect in the fall. So that's, I think, in September. My wife is going to be doing one in the wintertime called the Mushroom Medicine Chest and Cooking with Mushrooms. So she's going to be talking all on preparation,
Cool.
but she's also, my wife's a herbalist. So she'll be chatting all around her medicinal preparations and how she uses mushrooms medicinally. And I'm planning to do this in 2026 again because it was a big hit. So so we do bring in the live expert sessions where you get the actual community Q&A, all that kind of stuff. But the static stuff is there all the time, ready to go.
That's a neat setup. I like that.
I've been working in that more dynamic setup with my courses. I used to run these like standalone online courses, and they're for someone that's a real keener, you get through them, but most people don't finish those kinds of courses. But I find, if you can have some content that people can watch on their own time, but then you do these staggered live sessions, it kind of keeps the motivation going. If people fall off,
draws you back in, right? Draws you back in.
Yeah. And it'll get that, someone will fall off the horse and they'll be like, oh man, I haven't done the course for like 3 months, but then I found out the live session was coming up. I came on the live session, I got re-inspired, and now I'm doing it.
And away we go again.
And it finally pulled me back in. So, yeah. That's
super cool.
One other course that might be of interest really quick to your crew, Eric? You got a minute?
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I have another one that's actually more on the preparedness cycle that we're actually running. It's going to be starting in October, and it's called Roadmap to Resilience. And I literally just put it up on the website today. Registration is going to open in the next couple of days, but it's basically taking that holistic perspective to emergency management that I was talking about earlier. So, we're going to be sharing things like, what did I learn working for governments in modern emergency management? Frameworks like doing hazard identification and risk assessments and, emergency communications trees and all these kinds of things. But then we're also going to be bridging it with things like tactical preparedness, more like prepper stuff. We're going to be bridging it with like the naturalist knowledge, like reading the weather, reading the signs in nature, that kind of stuff. And then also bridging it with like the permaculture homesteading stuff. So it's really trying to create this just well-rounded skill set and knowledge base when it comes to prepping. Because at the end of the day, like we don't know what's around the next corner. You never know what's going to happen. Nope. So I'm a big fan of being well-rounded. We all tend to have our specialties, but I find in the prepping world, people often get pulled down like one rabbit hole, like everything's about the EMP, and they'll do all this.
That's your rabbit hole.
It doesn't happen, but like this thing does, whether it's the pandemic, it's the wildfire, and then you just need to evacuate quick. It's the whatever it is, the financial
ice storm.
Yeah.
Have you ever stopped to think about like adding an additional portion of your courses to like teach people like what yarrow can do for them if they cut themselves out in the woods, or how that when you touch poison ivy, the antidote for poison ivy actually grows within it, like all that other stuff, so that like it could help them while they're out in the woods?
So that is the nature side that I mentioned. That's a huge part of what I do and is woven into everything. So in the Roadmap to Resilience course, we do start to touch on that. There's the nature component, which is kind of what you were just sharing. There's the permaculture homestead. There's the modern emergency management. And there's the tactical side. So that's starting up in October. And it's going to be the same thing. We're going to have a whole bunch of pre-recorded things that people can watch on their own. But then we're bringing in some awesome experts. And basically once a month, October through January, we're going to have an expert in. And like the first one's going to be all on situational awareness, and the guy we're bringing in, this guy, John Young, it's going to be super badass, talking about how to increase your awareness when you're out in public. We're going to do one that's all on resilient energy systems, like how to fortify your home for disasters. So we're going to have the live expert sessions, the Q&As, but the pre-recorded. So that's the roadmap to resilience. So you can check that out on chrisoutdoors.ca as well. And just to answer that other question there, you're saying about, all the plant stuff, like yarrow is good for this and poison ivy remedies. A lot of the in-person stuff I do is like that. So if you ever want to come up to the homestead, we actually do run courses up where I live. So you can find that out on Chris Outdoors. And we do edible plant walks. We do edible mushroom walks. My wife, through Wild Muskoka Botanicals, actually runs a medicinal plants class where you come and learn how to make your own herbal medicines. And that one is 1 day a month over a 6-month period, learning how to make your own herbal medicine. And again, massive thing in the prepping world. I think, if we ever end up in a scenario where we can't go to the pharmacy for an extended period of time, the plants are our pharmacies, right? So we do teach that stuff up on the homestead as well.
As honestly, I'm a huge believer on that because that's exactly what I'm using right now. I use ashwagandha for hormone balance and a bunch of other stuff that it offers, like their lemon balm and like chamomile is used to help me relax. I've been using dandelion root to help me with my diuretics. Like there's so much stuff that plants can do that people don't realize.
It's so cool when you start really learning how potent they are and getting into that relationship. That's awesome. Good for you.
Is your wife going to potentially offer virtuals that if someone can't make it up once a month out to your place, that like she can be on and we could like someone could watch, or I don't know if that's up in the air.
She hates online stuff. So she once in a while, like for example, not the roadmap to resilience. Sorry. With the mushrooms course, she's going to come on and do an evening on medicinal mushrooms. I've roped her in, but she's probably never going to create her own online experience. She hates it. She's a forager. She wants to be in the woods. She can't do this computer thing like I do. So the online stuff is mostly me. Although in the mushroom course, all the foraging lessons actually are her. I have got her to stand in front of the camera and tell us about her mushroom stuff in front of the camera. But you probably won't see her doing her own one. But there are some medicinal mushroom lessons inside the course that are taught by my wife.
Okay.
And whereabouts are these in-person courses held, Chris?
We're in kind of central Ontario for folks that are, so I know people are listening from all over the world. So this is very much Canada, Ontario folks here. You can go to chrisoutdoors.ca and check out all the info, or wildmuskoka.com is the forage business where we run the foraging walks in the wild medicine making program.
Awesome. And of course, the online stuff is available to anybody listening. So.
Yeah, anywhere in the world for the online stuff, for sure. And the coupon code, the PREP40 for 40% off is available anywhere in the world.
Because when your wife teaches the medicine stuff with her tinctures and salves and all that stuff, does she teach like if everything was to shut down and you can't get like vodka off the shelf, is there another way to infuse it? Like, because I know you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So I wouldn't say those are built into her course and the way that she teaches. But I mean, you could certainly, she's a wealth of knowledge. So in the in-person, I mean, if you were to hang out with her in person, you could certainly ask those questions and she'll share when she knows the answer and be honest when she doesn't, We have actually, I don't know whether it'll happen or not, but we've been dreaming about doing kind of like a homesteading / permaculture / preparedness in-person session next summer. I don't know if we'll do it or not, but if we do run that course, that might be the kind of stuff we would start weaving into it. But we want to gear it a little bit more towards like kind of the preparedness, resilient living kind of angle of gardening, more like survival gardening and doing medicine making and stuff with that angle of disaster preparedness.
You guys should almost go to the prepper meet. Cool.
I've been before. It's been a few years though.
Oh, it's fantastic. Any last minute things you wanted to talk about, Chris, or anything you wanted to get across? Just being cognizant of the time here.
Yeah, geez, I don't know if there's anything else specific. I mean, I hope I didn't, overwhelm people with the amount of information. I get pretty passionate when I get going there, but I'm just stoked to be on and just, open people up to the idea that mushrooms might be an awesome thing that they're missing in their prep. And even beyond prepping, it's just super rewarding way to get healthy nutritional food. You can make your own medicines, which is super rewarding. So I'll just kind of leave it there. And if there's any more questions, I'm happy. Or if you want to go down some other rabbit hole, I'm happy. But I feel pretty good about that.
No, I never honestly thought that we would talk about mushrooms and spend almost an hour doing it. It's it's neat. I think it's opened my eyes up a little bit in regards to a prep that I never even really considered. That's
actually here, I'll throw one interesting thing in there.
Sure.
So I hear about people, I can think of a couple guys that I've talked to before, that they've got their thing of seeds that are stashed away in their prepper stash, but they've never actually gardened before. And in their mind, just like, if it hits the fan, I'm going to go and till a bunch of soil and grow these.
Mhm.
As somebody that actually does it, I'd say, good luck. There's a steep learning curve to that. We've been growing for 15 years to get to the point that we're starting to reach some level of self-sufficiency, to building the systems.
Yep.
Mushrooms really can speed that up substantially by helping you, one, have a food source right away while you're waiting to develop all those other food sources, but two, build the soil faster. And all plants need good soil to produce yield. Growing mushrooms can help you produce better soil to produce better yield. Factor in a couple of small animals. One of the other things we do is rabbits. And I would say, if I was going to give you like my top 2 or 3 things on the homestead, mushrooms are number 1, rabbits are number 2. Incredibly low amount of work, an incredibly large amount of protein. Raised rabbits are actually much fattier than wild rabbits because I snare rabbits as well. And they're very lean, and people worry about, protein starvation with snared rabbits, but domestic rabbits actually have quite a bit of fat on them. But again, the rabbits produce so much manure. It's huge for soil building.
And so good for the garden.
Yeah. So you could think, again, if you're thinking about, maybe you're not a gardener now, but you've got that thing of seeds thinking that if shit hits the fan, you're going to start planting those seeds. Knowing that you can use mushrooms to actually create better soil faster, and rabbits as well with the manure. Plus
living soil.
To think about. Yeah. Living
soil is your holy grail.
So
and the other thing with
that note.
And
we got one more live chat question too. Go ahead, Mel.
I was going to say, and with seeds, if anybody is looking into following what Chris is offering and getting that seeds and whatever, aim for the heartloom additions because you can always pull the seeds out of your plants or let them go to flower to create the seeds that you can always keep collecting them. So you're just buying, if you can maintain it, you're just buying that initial pack of seeds and now you're constantly growing. But you also have to make sure watch in for that genetics and stuff like that. So if you have a sick plant, don't collect the seeds from that sick plant, collect it from the healthy ones. But those heartloom seeds are key.
We've got one question in the live chat here from Dave. And it's a good one too. Just can mushrooms be preserved or canned?
Oh, absolutely, Dave. And that's how we produce more mushrooms. I've got mushrooms from 3 years ago. So we actually dry a lot of them. They dry really easily, freeze them. You can them. But honestly, I wouldn't waste the energy and the space on canning them. I would just dry them myself.
Dry them.
Yeah. And then we rehydrate them all winter long. We put them in soups and stews, in stir fries.
One last question, and I know Eric really wants to get off here. Well, not really get off, but I know what he's trying to do. He's trying to keep in the hour type of thing. When you go to, let's say, throw them in your dehydrator to preserve them for teas or rehydration for meals afterwards, do you need a specific dehydrator just for them? Because do they release the spores, or it's fine to throw it in and the next batch I can throw in a batch of carrots or whatever, and it doesn't matter? Oh,
yeah, awesome. So you don't need a particular type of dehydrator. Actually, I do a lot of mine just on in our laundry room. I've got them just on screens, laid out. I've also taken them and just run strings through them and hung them. So literally cut them up in fine little slivers and then just take a needle and thread them and just hang them.
And just make sure you have space in between so that air can circulate.
Yeah. So you can dehydrator does it faster, but you can absolutely air dry them.
And you sorry, let me rephrase my question. You don't need just one dehydrator for mushrooms. It doesn't release spores or anything. Okay.
Yeah, you can use it in the same one that you use your veggies as well, for sure.
Okay. And you don't find it let's say someone puts it in the laundry room, because for me, I'm able to do what you do, run that string and hang the mushrooms in our laundry room, but you don't find that the laundry soap smell or the bounce sheets, they don't add that taste or anything into them.
Oh, interesting. No, I haven't noticed that, although I'm pretty natural with the kind of stuff that we use for soap.
Me too. I don't use bounce sheets and...
Yeah, I haven't had any issue with drying them in the laundry room, so...
Okay. Yeah, because I use the vinegar. I'm using the borax and baking soda type of mixer stuff. I don't believe in the other stuff, but I just wanted to see because most people do use dryer sheets in the concentrated laundry soap.
Yeah, I've got no experience, but I don't think it would be a big issue personally.
We need you on for part 2.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd come back. What other rabbit hole? We could go down so many.
That'd be fantastic to have you back. But maybe we'll cut it there. I know we're getting to the hour 15 mark here. We got a few other segments to go through, but I do appreciate you kind of coming out and sharing your knowledge again. It's always good to have you come out, and knowledgeable guy, all kinds of good info. Like I said, I never thought that I'd be talking about mushrooms or be as intrigued as I am. Just never really crossed my mind as something that would be on the list of preparedness things. So that's, now I got some research to do, some rabbit holes to go down, maybe some mushrooms to grow.
Right on. Glad you're feeling inspired.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Jeff, you wanted to touch on upcoming events?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, Terry wasn't able to be with us, but the Peppers Meet this past July was an amazing success. There's a couple of people in the live chat that we met there. It was great to see them and actually meet them in person. So thanks to the wonderful hosts, the Slovenian Hunters and Anglers Club. They're just north of Alliston. Of course, all the attendees and a whole bunch of amazing presenters. Everybody, kind of pitched in and helped where they needed help. So the plan's already underway for 2026. Just stay tuned. Keep checking out the Facebook page. I'm sure the Grand Poobah Terry will be with us at some point as well to give us some updates. And it was a great time. And if you haven't been there, you really need to go.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Like Pete Lost in the Woods says in the live chat here, the only problem we had was a few hecklers when we were doing the live show from the staging area there, and those hecklers were Pete Lost in the Woods. So, But no, it's a fantastic location, tons of fun. Had a lot of fun doing the live stream from there as well. That's something we haven't done before, and it worked out, and we'll try to do it again next year as well. But if you haven't got out, come on out and check it out. It's a fantastic event. And you got a weather blurb, Jeff?
I do. So, I'll just kind of more or less for now put it to one simple word, and that's hot. It's hot. It's been hot for a while. There's been lots of places in the plains and the upper plains of the United States that have been setting temperature records for days and days and days. Basically, long story short, how this happens, it's a high pressure system that's kind of locked in over the southern U.S. It spins clockwise, so it pulls all of the Gulf moisture, the warm Gulf air, up and into the plains and up across the top. A lot of people, they commonly refer to it as the ring of fire phenomenon. Basically, that's what it does. It just pulls that hot ring of fire air right up and around. Of course, on the flip side to that, you get the cooler air on the other side on the low pressure system that goes counterclockwise. And when those meet, that's where you get the severe storms and the bad weather outbreaks. And we've had quite a few of them, especially in the plain states and stuff like that. So, and that's going to continue for a while. I think we will see a cool down, hopefully shortly, but I don't know how long it's going to last. On the hurricane front, I was going to say it's been a very slow start to the season. We haven't had a season. We have not had a named Atlantic hurricane yet, or at least we haven't even had we've had a couple of named storms that more or less didn't even get to tropical storm status. But that's going to change. The things are picking up, especially in what they call the main development region, which is an area between Africa and the islands, like the Lower Antilles Islands and that kind of stuff. And it's really picking up. I think we're going to see the first Atlantic hurricane probably by the end of this week. And just to say how late the season is, last year, the first hurricane we had was Beryl, and that was in the end of June. So we're already into mid-August. So not all the models are in agreement with the exact path. Some have it not making landfall at all. I think personally, I think it's there's a 50-50 chance that the storm makes it at least very close to the coast in Florida, and maybe then shoots up the coast and hits the Outer Banks and the Carolinas and that. But we'll have to wait and see. We're still 10 days out. Things will change. I'll keep updating the Discord, but it's certainly something to be aware of. And I continue, although this may not be weather related, I sort of think it is. I continue to be concerned with the large uptick in the seismic activity that's going on around the Pacific Ring of Fire. So that's kind of a tectonic plate, runs up the west coast of the United States, across Alaska, over to Russia, down through Japan, and that. It's been very active the last probably 15 to 20 days. We've had two major earthquakes in that area. We had the 8.8 in Kamchatka, Russia, and we had the 7.3 in Sandpoint, Alaska. And there's been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of small quakes of a level 2 and higher in the last 30 days. I believe in or around Kamchatka, Russia there. I think the last number I looked at it was there's been 154 earthquakes in the last 22 days. Wow. So it's picking up, and I'm concerned. It is piquing me a little bit. It may just be an anomaly. I don't know. Are we in line for a major earthquake? I can't answer that question. I don't think anybody can. But looking at what I'm seeing, I'm a little bit concerned.
Jeff, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
That Ring of Fire, does that also connect all those major volcanoes as well?
Some of them, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're in and around that area. Yeah. Long and short, yes.
Okay.
They're close. They're close enough that.
I'd love to throw one at you, if you don't mind, Jeff.
Sure, Chris.
Yeah, and I don't know if you know this, but I mean, one of my passions is reading the signs of the land as well. You know, whether it's weather or like wildlife tracking, all that kind of stuff. I think it's fascinating. I'm curious, is there any connection between the lack of hurricane activity down south and the fact that we've had this hot air just sitting here all summer? And you were talking about
absolutely.
Is there a relationship between those two?
Because one of the things is as those hurricanes and those storms come through. So I'm going to talk about just quickly nerd out on you for sea surface temperatures and stuff like that. When you get those storms, they agitate the water. They you know, that the cooler, deeper water will come to the surface, and you'll get that flipping of kind of the temperature of the water and stuff like that. That hasn't happened. We're running sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico right now are 30 to 31 degrees Celsius. They're like mid 80s. And I've said it before that's just like throwing gasoline on a fire. So absolutely 100% that can be correlated together. Yep.
Interesting.
Wow.
I want to start a bunch of rabbit holes here, Eric, but I know you got to go.
I don't have to go. We can go down rabbit holes if people have time. That's fine. Go down rabbit holes. Let's do it.
At least you can find a lot of this on the Discord, right? So it works out too.
Well, here's I'll ask one other rabbit hole one then. So I'm in Ontario here. I've been up in this region for about 18 years. I can only think of 2 years where we've had smoke like we've had the last couple of years. Like, well, this year, and then not last year, but the year before. Like these walls of smoke that just come in, last, go away, come back. In 18 years, this seems like a new phenomenon to me. And I'm wondering if there's any connection between the reason the smoke is coming here and sitting with these bigger weather patterns as well. Like, have you tracked that? Am I wrong? Do you have any kind of theory? Because I've been trying to figure out, like, because we've had massive wildfires before. Like, massive wildfires aren't new. I can remember tons of years where I feel like I heard just as much talk about wildfires in the prairies, even worse fires in northern Ontario, but we never had the smoke down here like we did. And I'm trying to figure out what that's all about. Do you got a theory on that? Or am I missing something?
I really don't have a theory on it, except that I think for me at least, the jet stream is right on top of us, and that's where you're going to get the airflow. You're going to get the west to east flow. So that's where it's going to pick up the smoke from Saskatchewan and Manitoba and Alberta and all that. And with the speed of the jet stream and that, it's just pulling it right over top of us.
Yeah, it's interesting because my wife and I were kind of speculating it on the other night, and she was talking about how it seems like that polar vortex has been letting go more frequently in recent years, and that everything's just kind of been dropping south. And she'd wondered if there was something similar with that right now. That's the last couple of years that's just been allowing these. So maybe in the past those smokes would have actually traveled further north, east to west, and they're dropping further south because of that vortex. And
absolutely they are, and they would have been further north. And you know what? You brought up a good point. I didn't put the polar vortex into the idea of that, but that's absolutely 100% could be happening. I mean, you think of polar vortex being winter and being cold, and so I mean, you've piqued me on that. Now I'm going to have to go dig down that rabbit hole.
Well,
so many rabbit holes.
We should almost have a show just with Jeff talking about weather and what his predictions are for like the winter coming up, because this seems like everything's lining up to be one heck of a wet, ice stormy type of weather by the sounds of everything.
No more ice storms, please.
Yeah, I could get into that a little bit. I've just sort of started my fall, winter sort of looking at, weather patterns, steering currents, all that kinds of stuff, where we are now and were we at the same spot 10 years ago, what happened 10 years ago, how things move around. It's not just, pick it out of a hat and whatever. There's, and I'm no meteorologist by any means. I was never, I never went to school for that. Everything's self-taught. I follow a lot of online meteorologists and people like that. I pick up a lot of hints from them. And so, but yeah, like Justin said, the high over the Midwest, it's large. It is. And it is, as he said, it is pushing the jet stream more north. And that's why we're getting, like those states in the, that are complaining about our smoke. We should tariff them on it, but hey, that's a whole nother story. But they're complaining, just like you said, hey, we're getting all this smoke this year that we never got last year. Yeah, because now you've got the jet stream, and the high is whipping it around, and yeah, it's Justin's onto something there for sure. So
that opens the question too for back to Chris, is that like with all the smoke in the air, I do know that the smoke that settles onto the plants and it blocks the air holes and all that stuff on the plants and all that stuff. Does that do the same thing with mushrooms?
I haven't noticed. Well, this year we haven't had many mushrooms growing because it's been so hot and dry. So generally when we're in smoke season, there's not a lot of mushrooms coming out in the first place. But I think you're just talking about mild residue. I don't honestly think it's going to impair growth too much. And if you're worried about the residue, I think it's just a matter of rinsing stuff off. You're literally just talking about particulate that's landing on it, right? So I don't think it's going to impact growth, and I think you can just wash it if you're worried about particulate.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut Jeff off. It just when he mentioned that whole smoky season, it like legitimately reminded me that like you can like plants, if you don't clean them off with the dust and stuff, especially in your house, like they tend to stop breathing and doing their whole system thing of executing the CO2 and blah, 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 and all that stuff. So anyways, carry on, Jeff.
Yeah, lots of good information. That's I like how we squirrel off. This is good. Typical episode.
Sorry.
Squirrel, shiny object. That's
Sorry.
good. Nothing wrong with it. That's where we get a lot of our good information, right?
Eric, that dog's got a puffy tail. You see the dog with a puffy tail?
No, it's good. I like the whole squirrel off sessions where we get a whole bunch of extra little information and tidbits out of things. But
I also didn't mean to interrupt Jeff. We love him, but it's just like that just reminded me, so I do apologize on that. But
that's fine.
All good. Well, with that, maybe I will bring episode number 270 of the Canadian Prepper podcast to an end. You can find the audio copy on your favorite podcast app at this point. We're on pretty much all of them. If you don't mind taking a second and just submitting a review, it does encourage the algorithms for about 30 seconds. So we move up the list, and then they realize we're talking about prepping, and we go right back down again. So.
And we do record these shows live on YouTube, Facebook as well, if that's your choice. If you want an early peek at the shows, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Canadian Prepper Podcast. Click the notifications tab. That gives you an alert when we're going live. If anybody has any questions for me, it's feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
And Pierre and or Mel, where can we find you guys?
Well, you can find both of us. You can email us at offthewallcustomizing@gmail.com. You can make all your fancy customs t-shirts. You can also find us on the Tickety Talk. I'm working on the Facebook page for it now. Discord for the CPP. That's what he has written here anyway. So I'm just reading his stuff.
Fair enough. And Chris, again, where can everybody find you?
Yeah, most of my stuff is listed at chrisoutdoors.ca. And just a quick little reminder, if you go to the courses, you'll see the mushroom course online there. And if you put PREP40, you'll get 40% off, almost $100 in savings. It's also priced in Canadian dollars. So if there's Americans on there, you get it way cheaper, no tariffs. And if you're interested in the wild medicine making and wild food stuff, that's wildmuskoka.com. That's the wild medicine making course that I referenced there earlier. So wildmuskoka.com and chrisoutdoors.ca. And I am not on social media. I am done with that stuff. But good for you folks pushing through it, but I'm done.
Just the way to do it. That's perfect. I've put all the links in the live chat here. I'll throw them in the show notes as well for the audio listeners, so you've got them just in case you didn't catch them. You can check out Rapid Survival at rapidsurvival.com and get me there on the live chat. You can also email me at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca. So thanks again, Chris, for coming out and helping us out this evening with a whole bunch of information. I know it was information overload for a lot of us, but it's going to be good once it gets kind of all digested. So thanks everyone for joining us. Until next time, be prepared, stay safe,
and keep learning.